Those same people also outfoxed their friends from Plymouth who were working out of Windsor at the time, but soon had to give up that enterprise. So, the deed to Springfield is very important, and it tells us quite a bit about Pynchon and the natives. This is a picture of a copy. The original, I think, doesn't exist, but a handwritten copy does, and I've never seen it, but this is what it looks like, with the signatures at the bottom. In the first place, the deed is in the name of the Indians that he had met by name, individually identified, and the mother of one, Kiwanus, the Tamaham, or wife of Wenawis, and Nianam, the wife of Koa. That's on the Indian side. Women are mentioned in this deed because Pynchon figured out it was a matriarchal society. So that is step one. Did you notice step two? You get, this is a later deed, not much later, but this somewhat later deed shows the signatures, her mark of two of the women who signed, who both kind of made a horizontal ladders as their marks. But the marks of the Indians don't vary a whole lot. It's a bow and arrow or a canoe or something, not a lot of different kinds. But you can see they're thinking, how shall I identify myself? Signatures of both men and women. He had respect for for traditional native customs, and they are incorporated in the document. He included hunting and fishing, but that's a no-brainer. Everybody had that right, not a problem. But they shall enjoy all that Kautinakish, or ground that is now planted, and groundnuts, walnuts, acorns, and a kind of peas. And if any of our cattle get in the way, we will pay. And they did. And no hogs on the other side, except in acorn time, when nobody wants acorns but hogs, apparently. So that would be okay. The Indians detested cattle, so far as I can see. They were a major competition to their preferred livestock, deer. They were after the same things, grazing and the like. So they become a sidebar to the story. And in the deed, there are a number of Algonquian words written out and defined, so that when this deed might be read and there were present some of the Agawam Indians, they would know that it was what they signed because they'd hear some of their words. It's a dual language in that regard. There isn't an Indian form of this, an Algonquian version of this, but it melds in a number of names. Others include Mesaksek, which is long meadow, and that's what it means, long meadow. And Nyasa, there's a few other place names that were adopted by the English that had been identified as such by the natives. And he paid. The said Pynchon hath in hand paid the said 18 fathom of wampum, 18 coats, 18 hatch. I don't know why it was 18. There weren't 18 names, but it was 18. And not only that, one of the people, the Turner, figured out this is the time to ask for things. And he said, I'd like a couple of extra coats. He's not mentioned as being the chief or anything at the beginning, but by the end of the deed, there's this kind of a codicil that says, also the said Pynchon doth give to Rutherna 2 coats over and above the said particulars expressed. Okay, here's your coats. That is actually indicative of the way in which he tended to deal with return requests. One woman had sold him part of Chicopee, I think, and came back saying, I don't think we had it quite straight about the payment on that. And so he said, fine. Well, I'm making up what he said, I don't know. But the result of it was he gave her a glass and a knife and a child's red coat. I'm thinking she was probably small. And he said that fully satisfied her and her husband. So his policy seems to have been, okay, they came back about the sale of Feeding Hills and said, well, yes, we sold, but it only went to so-and-so. It didn't go to such and such, which you seem to think. So he paid again. That is the policy. Do not disturb. Do not create problems. That was Mr. Pynchon all over. And we will see how that works out in his relationships with Indians. This is some of the land he bought. Quanah, the other side. It's hard to find a view like this in West Springfield these days. I found it. And of course the Long Meadow, which may be built up more now than when I took that picture in 1970. But you know where the Long Meadow is. And it was there and it is there still. Now, his advice in letters gives some sense of his viewpoint. He talked in one letter in 1644, use dilatory means. For I perceive the nature of the Indians is upon every little occasion to be much provoked with the desire of revenge. But if means of delay be used but a while, the edge of their revengeful desire will soon be cooled. And they aren't going to start anything, but we better not start anything either. He was unclear about when they're being truthful, but he knew they were. So you have to listen carefully to figure that out. Sometimes they tell truth. But the biggest concern was the possibilities of violence or war. And the first one there puts it pretty well. I hope the English will never put the Indians to the trial. Today, the English be more than a little provoked to it. And he would keep writing to the governor, to Winthrop, and he would keep saying, as in these two later letters from 1646 and 1645, I'm so glad God spared us a war. I am so glad. Because it would have been at too high a price. He talked about it seems the Lord did not, at the bottom of the second one, bottom one, did not see sufficient grounds as yet to shed so much blood as both sides intended, both of English and Indians. And that was his persistent viewpoint on violence. And this is an interesting comment, maybe the most powerful one, actually, where he wrote to Governor Winthrop about a scheme that Winthrop was proposing to deal with some Indians who had killed others in Brookfield, Quabog, and had fled to Nonotuck, Northampton. And Pynchon could have gone there to get them. And the governor, at the behest of the sachem in Massachusetts, sachem said, why do we do this? Because that will show disinterest of the disinterested English justice at work. What a good idea. We don't have a dog in this fight, so why not bring them to court and we'll have a trial and we'll find out. That's what the Indian sachem wanted. Pynchon said, I don't like it. It's not a good idea. You'll have to send me military troops to back me up. I can't do this to cause this kind of a problem. And then he said this, I grant you, the Indians in question, are all within the line of your patent, the royal charter from the king that had his name in it. But yet, you cannot say that therefore they are your subjects or yet within your jurisdiction until they have fully subjected themselves to you, to your government. which I know they have not. And until you have bought their land, until this be done, they must be esteemed as an independent, free people. Now, you've seen the deed to Springfield. There is no deed to Boston, Plymouth, Salem, Hartford. There, people arrived, looked around, and said, well, I don't see anybody here. I guess we can land. It was the plan. Pynchon did not think that worked. One other person didn't, Roger Williams in Rhode Island, who did have a deed with the Narragansett Indians for Providence, but later than Pynchon. So it's a remarkable moment in terms of national remembrance and history. But then came the Pequot War. In 1637, April 23rd, Indians attacked in Abraham Finch's field. It's still there, and that's what it looks like. And killed, I think, 6 people, and took 2 girls prisoner, and killed a lot of cows. We would know that. We would expect them. Killed all the cows they could find. This was in retaliation for evicting their Sachem Sequin from lands nearby. I guess they thought he was too close. Speaking of close, at the same time in Springfield, there was an Indian village at the end of the South End Bridge on Long Hill Street. That was where the stockade was. It was not in the Long Meadow site. And there was an Indian village on the other side in Agawam. 100 people in each village. 250 Indians around, 25, 50 English. It was a different kind of lay of the land. So the result was the Connecticut court met and decided on offensive war against the Pequots. Their charter did not make that possible. Massachusetts said you could do defensive war, but they immediately took it into their own to do offensive war. Pynchon was furious. I think. We can only read through the lines. There were hostilities at Saybrook, which was a very important port where any shipping went through there. All of Pynchon's goods came up the river and went down the river. John Mason, a veteran of the 30 Years' War, took charge and led the charge against the village, the mystic village of the Pequots, and burned it on May 26, 1637, killing probably at least 400, maybe many more people. This is the shallop, the shallow boat which they commandeered from Pynchon, probably from Warehouse Point, took the boat and used it to transport the military along the shore up to Mystic. Pynchon was outraged. He said, you can't do that. You can't take my boats. The leaders of the whole Pequot uprising, if you wish, escaped southward to Southport, Connecticut, where there was the great swamp battle. And then 2 of them, or no, maybe more, were able to go up into a place called Dover Plains, where there's a cave called the Stone Church. Has anyone ever been there? I haven't. It's a place you can go. I'm looking forward to that one day. And threw themselves on the mercy of the Mohawks, who killed them, scalped them, and sent the scalps to Pynchon, not to the Connecticut court. And Pynchon hustled overland, I think probably really literally overland, not down the river and out and around, but as fast as he could, straight across the Bay Path to Winthrop, and said, Call it off. It's over. So his role in the Pequot War was to try to end it as fast as he could. The next year was the corn controversy, which I'm not going to detail, but this becomes the point where Springfield becomes Massachusetts again instead of Connecticut. Pynchon had met with the Connecticut court, the gathering of the magistrates, and they had asked him to buy corn because of the terrible famine that they were experiencing 1 year after the war. And, Springfield is, 2 years old now. And he apparently said he would try. He wanted to be a team player. He found out he couldn't buy the corn at the price they wanted, and he told them that. So they sent John Mason. We've met him. He was the guy that burned the Indian village to deal with them. Well, Mr. Mason wasn't very successful either. And this turned into a bitter controversy. At one point, they complained about Pynchon not getting transportation down the river from Springfield for the corn by commandeering a canoe. And he says, I won't do that. If we have that going on, what's the point? We lose our rights. What's it about? And this is what he says. It would be tyranny if I were able to take other people's goods and use them and commandeer them for military purposes. So Pynchon started talking again with the people in Massachusetts. Said, I think we're really in Massachusetts. And they said, yeah, we think you are. So that's why it's because of William Pynchon that we are Springfield, Massachusetts, and not Springfield, Connecticut, which would make more sense geologically, geographically. Everything goes up and down the river, at least it surely did in the past. But that was a solution to the problem. I don't have a slide in here about it because I'm going to present this in Connecticut, and I can't tell you this. But Hooker wrote a graceless response to Winthrop about this, vicious about Pynchon. He said, we know this man. We know what he's about. And if he could have done this if he wanted to. And they brought him to trial. They brought him to a church trial, which he lost in Connecticut. He appealed and decided, I'm going to my own church in Roxbury, Massachusetts. And they said, you're right, you're okay. It was pretty petty what happened in that regard. But those all go into Mr. Hooker, Mr. Pynchon, and why we are in the state we're in. Pynchon was just different, that's all. Here, when he had a problem with Indians who had escaped to Orinoco, and he wanted to bring them back, he sent Timothy Merrick, the constable, and he added on to the warrant of the arrest, if you find them at Orinoco, you may persuade him to come and push him forward to make him come. But in case you cannot make him come, by this means you shall not use violence, but rather leave him. Well, this compares with a somewhat earlier document from the Connecticut General Court Records, which said, we're going to send some people up to the Orinoco Indians, declare unto them that we have a desire to speak with them, to know the reasons why they said they are afraid of us. And if they will not come to us willingly, then to compel them to come by violence. Dumb! So incredibly dumb! Why don't you like us? I don't get it. Which of those makes more sense, so I would ask you.